Okay, in this video we're going to watch the segment of the film Liaison from the Chapitre Préliminaire. So you can see here that I've set my subtitles to French. I'm going to click play. I'm in my video library. And so we've seen here that we have Notre Dame in the background, the Seine River coming through Paris. So we know that for this portion of the film we're in Paris. And obviously because it's snowing, we're in winter. So here we see we have an older lady who is obviously sick, and this is us using our context clues to try and figure out what's going on, even though we might not know all of the words that they are using in French. From our first lesson in Chapitre Préliminaire, we learned what ça va means. How are you? How's it going? Okay, we obviously know what oui means. So she's saying, yes, I'm okay, but obviously she's very sick. And she's speaking to mon fils, my son.
Attends. Je suis Madeleine Prévost de Paris, née Tremblay, femme de Henri Prévost et mère.
So here we see that we're actually getting a flashback from 1951, and she's using the form of the verb être. Je suis Madeleine Prévost de from Paris. So here we see that we have moved to present days. De nos jours means present days, of our time, of our days. And we are now in Montreal in Canada.
Puis nous allons parler de la psychologie de la psychose. C'est un vaste sujet.
So here we've seen that the young woman is hurrying through something that looks a lot like many universities or schools. So we could use our context clues to surmise that she's a student already. And if we look at what the professor is saying, we may not know all of the words here, but we can notice some cognates or words that are the same in French and in English. So if we look at psychologie, that would tell us that he's talking about psychology. It looks a lot like the word psychology. If we look here, we know this is the verb être. So it is. C'est would mean it is. It's a general term. Vaste sujet. So these two words look a lot like their counterparts in English. Vaste, obviously meaning big or vast, and then sujet meaning subject. We can also expand it a little bit more if we think outside of the box. La psychologie de la psychose. So here we're talking about a specific kind of psychology, maybe one that is very defined in that area of study.
Je disais que nous allions parler de la psychologie de la psychose. C'est un vaste sujet. Par exemple, qu'est-ce que l'anormalité?
Again, we can see here some cognates. So, for example, qu'est-ce que, ça veut dire what is. That's not a cognate, but it's a very important phrase for us to learn in French. So, qu'est-ce que, what is. And then we see another cognate here, l'anormalité. So, abnormality.
Et que veut-on dire par la normalité?
And we can see here that he's asking about la normalité. So we can maybe surmise that he's saying, what would one mean by the term normality?
Ça veut dire quoi être normal?
So we see here that the young woman is now going into something called a clinique, which is another cognate. And we can see here many cognates again. Service psychologique et psychiatrique. So psychological services. She's going into this building. And we've seen in her notebook that she's made a note about her mother. C'est ma mère. Her mother. So there must be some connection there.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Madame Gagné. Ça va bien? Oui, merci. Et elle, comment va-t-elle? Elle va mieux ces jours-ci. Elle est dans sa chambre. Allez la voir.
So the nurse has asked her how she's doing, ça va bien. And then Claire, the young woman, asked her about somebody named Elle. So we know she's talking about somebody else because she's saying she is in her room. She is, elle est.
Bonjour, maman. Claire, c'est toi? Ce n'est pas une de mes hallucinations?
So here Claire is entering the room and we see that this is her maman or her mère, her mother, okay? And her mother asks, c'est toi, is it you? And then we see here the form of the verb être, but in the negative. So we have ne pas around it, which we'll talk about. So ce n'est pas, it's not one, une, de mes hallucinations. So this is not one of my hallucinations.
Non, maman, c'est moi. Bon. Quand on est folle, il faut être certaine.
So here the mother is talking about herself. She says quand on est folle. So again, the form of the verb être, okay? And she says when one is crazy or a little out of it, maybe, for folle. That would be what that word means. And so we have on est, and so you see the familiar form of the usage of on here. Il faut être certaine. So here we see it is necessary, il faut, and then the infinitive of the verb être, because we already have a conjugated verb here. It is necessary to be. So just like in English, we would say to be. In French, we don't need to conjugate that verb. Il faut être certain. It is necessary to be certain.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais là? Viens jouer avec moi. On joue à quoi?